You know, it feels like we're just swimming in information these days. Notifications, chats, emails. It's constant.
It really is. Communication is just everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And when you dig into it, like with these sources you shared, you find it in, well, some pretty surprising places.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing today. Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive into this whole world of effective communication. We've got this great stack of sources you provided, and we're going to unpack them.
Yeah, our goal here is basically to sift through all this material and pull out the key stuff. You know, what is effective communication? How does it actually work? Why is it so important? Hopefully help you get up to speed fast.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The sources kick off with this really big idea. Communication isn't just a human thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying it's like a trait of all living things.
That's such a crucial starting point, isn't it? It just broadens the whole perspective. We tend to focus on us, you know, talking, writing, emotions, even silence or how we dress.
Right.
But these sources show that this sending and receiving of signals, it's universal.
They give some great examples too. Like, obviously your pets, right? We kind of get what they're saying.
Yeah, intuitively.
But also historical stuff like messenger pigeons or working animals, dogs using scent, horses for transport. That's all communication.
Complex signaling, absolutely. Even, you know, animal characters in cartoons, they work because we understand those nonverbal cues instinctively.
And get this, plants too. The sources mentioned plants communicating.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, actually. They talk about stuff happening underground, like between roots and bacteria,
Wow.
helping with soil fertility, or plants using colors and scents to attract insects. It's information transfer, even if it's not, you know, talking.
So this whole information exchange thing is ancient, baked into life itself. And for us humans, the sources say it starts super early.
Incredibly early.
Like even in the womb, that connection between mother and child.
Yeah, they frame it as this very early form of exchange. There's even this interesting reference they pull from the Mahabharata, the Abhimanyu story, suggesting the child might even influence the mother's thoughts somehow. It's a fascinating idea about that initial connection.
Wild. And of course, learning to communicate doesn't stop there. It's a lifelong, right? Home, school.
Future careers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The sources emphasize that development over time.
Mm-hmm.
And they make a point, actually, that people in professions you might think of as purely technical doctors, lawyers, engineers, managers, they're often much better at their jobs when they're also strong communicators.
That really hits home. It's fundamental no matter what you do. Okay, here's something the sources really stress. Communication is a two-sided deal.
Critically important, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not just about sending a clear message.
Right, the sender has to, package it so the receiver gets it.
And this is the big hurdle they point out, what if the receiver just isn't interested or, you know, indifferent? You can send the perfect message, but if the other person isn't tuned in, it just fails. And this leads to a really powerful point they make directly to you, the listener. They basically say the quality of your life is directly tied to your response in communication.
Whoa, okay, so it's not just about how well I talk or write.
Exactly. It's also about how well you receive, interpret, and, well, act on what comes your way. A lot of onus on the receiving end.
It really does. Something to think about. Okay, shifting gears to human communication specifically. Oral language talking, that's the foundation, right?
That's the bedrock, yeah. It's how we first learn, naturally. All languages started spoken. And as the sources note, it's still how most things like interviews get done.
And then written language came along.
Out of that need to record the spoken word, give it permanence, reach. They mention English becoming this global language for industry and trade, which shows how writing connects people across space and time. But they also remind us, language isn't static. It lives, it changes.
So what are the big differences the sources highlight? Between speaking and writing, I mean. They feel really different in practice.
Oh, hugely different. Speaking has all that extra stuff, right? Pronunciation, tone, your facial expression, body language.
All those nonverbal cues.
Exactly. They shape the meaning so much. Writing. It has to rely purely on the words themselves. Vocabulary, spelling, punctuation. And the sources are really clear. Punctuation is vital for clarity.
Right.
But using too much is as bad as using too little. Good writing, they argue, boils down to organizing your ideas logically,
right,
making those connections clear on the page.
Makes sense. Without the voice and face, you have to be clearer with structure. The sources actually give a kind of checklist for effective writing, don't they? 5 things.
They do, yeah. A useful framework. First, it has to be clear.
Yeah.
No ambiguity about what needs doing or understanding.
Okay.
Second, context. The why of the message needs to be obvious right up front.
Got it.
Third, compassionate. This one's interesting. They suggest requests generally work better than commands. More persuasive.
Softer approach.
Fourth, convincing. The reader needs to buy into what you're saying or asking. See the logic or need. And finally, specific. Just absolutely zero room for doubt or misinterpretation. Leave nothing unsaid.
Clear, context, compassionate, convincing, specific. Wow. Just thinking of those when writing an email could make a huge difference.
It really could. It directly tackles that receiver side of the equation we talked about, ensuring your message lands effectively.
Okay, so that's written, but then the sources move on to something huge that doesn't use words at all, body language.
Ah, yes, the unspoken communication. It's about learning to read those signals, those gestures and postures we see constantly but often ignore.
This part was fascinating. The examples they give are so specific. Things we see every day.
Totally. Simple stuff like trembling hands or sweating.
Nervousness.
Classic sign, yeah. Or facial expressions. They say you can really tell an arrogant smile from a genuinely happy one. Or spot fear versus pity just in someone's eyes.
And hands, they talk a lot about hands. Raised hands for surrender, obviously, but...
Crossed arms or clasped hands, signaling defensiveness or tension. Hands on hips, showing readiness, like an athlete.
Yeah. Or that hands clasped behind the back, chin up thing.
Overconfidence, often.
Yeah.
Even couples holding hands a sign of possession, they suggest. Or someone hitting a table, maybe seeking to project confidence.
It's like a whole hidden conversation happening.
It really is. And even how you sit. A high chair might project dominance. Crossed legs could be defensive. And walking styles, too, described as surprisingly unique identifiers.
They even got specific about walking. Fast walkers, swinging arms, head up, suggests clear goals. They mention a specific cultural note, too, possibly about an African man with that style.
A specific observation mentioned in the source material. And the opposite, someone walking slowly, head down, rarely looking up, suggesting sadness or preoccupation.
It really makes you want to start observing people more closely, and yourself.
Exactly. The sources encourage that active observation. It just adds this whole other layer to understand what's being communicated.
Okay, so we've got sending messages, words, writing, body, but what about the other side? Receiving. You said that was crucial.
Absolutely critical. Which brings us to listening. The sources hammer this home. You cannot be an effective communicator if you're not a good listener, period.
Okay.
They break down the listening process into 5 steps. First is sensing just the physical act of hearing.
Hearing the sound?
Yep.
Yeah.
Second, interpreting. Making sense of those sounds, understanding the words and meaning.
Okay.
Third, evaluating. This is where you form an opinion or judgment about what you've heard.
Right, processing it.
Fourth, remembering. Storing the information, basically, for later use. And fifth, responding, which they define as sort of accepting what's said, acknowledging it, processing it.
Sensing, interpreting, evaluating, remembering, responding. It's definitely more active than just letting sound wash over you. What gets in the way, though? Surely there are obstacles.
Oh, definitely. Loads of things. Obvious stuff like noise, but also internal things being stressed, anxious, tired. All that can seriously mess with your ability to truly listen. But they do give tips.
Good. Like what?
Simple, but effective things. Make eye contact. Sit attentively, like sit up straight. Actively think about why the information might be useful to you. And this is a key question. Check your understanding.
How?
By summarizing it back in your own words. So if I understand correctly, you're saying that sort of thing.
Oh, that makes sense. Confirms you interpreted correctly. The sources also really pushed reading, didn't they? As crucial for knowledge.
They really did. Positioned books as maybe the best way to transfer deep knowledge and stressed reading constantly. And not just reading, but reading effectively.
What does that mean, according to them?
Well, having a purpose when you read, not just scanning words, engaging with the content, not just glancing at the cover, trying to widen your field of vision over time to read faster, finding the main points. And the best tip I thought was read with your mind.
Read with your mind, I like that. Active engagement.
Exactly. And all this effective writing, speaking, listening, reading, they tie it back to self-confidence.
Ah, right, the belief factor.
Yeah, they put it very bluntly. If you think you can't, you can't. Simple as that. You have to believe in yourself, focus on success.
That connects to personal growth too, right? Knowing yourself.
Definitely. Self-evaluation is key, knowing your strengths, your weaknesses in communication and beyond. Learning is lifelong. And they make this interesting, maybe slightly challenging observation.
Which is?
That actually very few people have really good communication skills. But they frame it as an opportunity for you, the listener. Developing these skills takes patience, yes, but it really makes you stand out.
And they even mention communicating with yourself, like internal reflection.
Yeah, that internal dialogue. They even mention prayer as one possible avenue for that if other ways don't connect for someone. It just shows how communication isn't only external.
It's internal processing, too.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, drawing from these sources. From how universal communication is, through spoken, written, body language, listening, reading, confidence. Let's try and boil down the absolute must-knows.
Okay, the big takeaways that really jump out are, 1, it starts super early. 2, the receiver is just as vital as the sender, that two-way street idea.
Right.
3, body language speaks volumes, sometimes more than words. 4, you absolutely cannot communicate well if you don't listen well. And maybe that point that good skills are rare, making them a huge advantage if you develop them.
And the payoff, what's the big why?
The sources position effective communication as a major factor. Maybe the major factor separating success from failure in pretty much all areas. Home, work, everywhere.
And it builds confidence?
Directly. Good communication, knowledge, experience, they feed into self-belief. The sources encourage actively seeing yourself as successful, setting goals, making a plan, working towards it, handling setbacks with grit, seeking support, even following basic etiquette. It all contributes.
It's quite a journey, isn't it? From like bacteria signaling in the soil to building personal success, all connected by how we send and receive information.
It really is a powerful synthesis. And the idea is, these aren't just theories, they're tools. Perspectives you can start using right away. Observe more, aim for clarity, listen better, evaluate your own habits.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive based on the sources you gave us, here's a final thought to chew on. We've talked a lot about the sender, the message, the different channels, but the sources really stress how much getting that message across relies on the receiver paying attention, being engaged. So considering that the idea that the success of your communication often hinges on the other person's active participation, how might that change the way you approach things, both when you're the sender trying to connect and when you're the receiver choosing to engage?
It really shifts the responsibility, or at least the perspective, doesn't it? Something to ponder.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today. We really hope these insights help you navigate your own communications more effectively.
Until next time, keep connecting.
Bye.